Hey there, Math fans. Test 10, Lesson 5. Get your swords ready and let's go. My voice is still a little shaky today, so bear with me. I can read a stem and leaf chart, which is a review, and I can eliminate bias in a study. So we'll start with a quick review about how to read a stem and leaf chart. So just a reminder about stem and leaf charts. Usually the leaf digit is the ones digit, and the stem shows you what comes before. So in this chart, this represents 121, 126, 126, and 128. In a stem and leaf chart, I need to have all the numbers even if there's nothing over here. There's nothing that begins with 1-4. If it was 140, if you look down here on the 17s, I have 170, 170, and 171. So if there was anything that started with 1-4, there would be zeros here. Because there's nothing, it means there are no numbers, but I still have to include it. Why do I do stem and leaf charts? Because it's a nice, easy way to see where the data is clustered. So you can see here that most of my data is clustered around the 160 mark, which makes it much easier to find the median and the mean, which you don't need to do yet, but you probably will in your future math journeys. So good information to have. So that's your stem and leaf chart. Just a quick review. Hopefully not too difficult. Continuing on from last week, we're going to talk a little bit more about how to eliminate bias in a study. So the mathematical definition of bias is a systematic, which means built-in error, which makes all values wrong by a certain amount, and I'll explain what that means. So here on this page we have some examples of bias. So it says if you measure something several times and all values are close, they may all be wrong if there is a bias. A bias is a systematic built-in error which makes all measurements wrong by a certain amount. So a good example is if your scales read 1 kilogram when there's nothing on them, then everything you measure is going to be wrong by 1 kilogram because your scale already reads 1 kilogram. Same with if you always measure your height when you're wearing shoes with big thick soles or high heels. Your height is always going to be wrong by the amount of height that your heels give you. A stopwatch that takes half a second to stop when clicked, you're never going to get the accurate time because you have a built-in bias of half a second. Okay? So in each case, all measurements will be wrong by the same amount, and that is called bias. So here's another example of a built-in bias. Let's say you have a measurement that only measures in ones, so it will only give you 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It won't give you decimals. Anything you measure that is between 6.5 and 7.4 will measure as 7. All of your measurements will be wrong by a little bit. It's not your fault. You didn't measure incorrectly. It's a built-in bias. Same example down here, we have something that measures in 2s. And if it's measuring in 2s, then anything in between 7 and 9 is going to be counted as 8. So you've got a built-in bias. The same thing can happen when we do surveys or studies or any kind of data collection. If we design our question or our survey improperly, we're going to wind up with a built-in bias. And this is what I was talking about last week when I used the example of if you want to know how many kids at our school play video games and you ask all the grade 1s, you're not going to find out how many kids play video games. Your answer will be wrong because you built a bias right into your survey. Your bias is that you're only looking at grade 1s. Okay? So that's what happens in data collection with bias. So today, instead of a review, what I'm going to do is ask you to do an online review. So you're going to go to www.tinyurl.com/bias-and-surveys. And that's on IXL, and it has some multiple choice questions to help you figure out if you can identify bias in a study. Please complete at least 10 questions. You're welcome to do more. I can't check if you did this, obviously, but please do because it will help you a lot on the test and on understanding what bias is. And that's it. So quick little lesson and then just a quick activity on IXL and you are finished. I will see you tomorrow.